Imagine you're an ant, going about your day, foraging for food, following the scent trails your sisters laid down before you. Everything feels normal. But deep inside your body, something is already changing. Tiny fungal cells are multiplying, spreading through your blood, and soon, you won't be yourself anymore. You'll become a puppet, controlled by one of nature's most terrifying parasites. This is the story of Ophiocordyceps, the zombie fungus, and it's stranger than any horror movie you've ever seen. It starts with a single spore. Ophiocordyceps releases millions of them into the humid air of tropical forests, mostly in places like Thailand, Brazil, and parts of Africa. These spores are microscopic, lighter than dust, and they drift through the forest canopy until one of them lands on an unsuspecting carpenter ant. The spore doesn't just sit there. It uses specialized enzymes to dissolve through the ant's tough exoskeleton, that hard outer shell that normally protects it from the world. The process takes several hours, and the ant has absolutely no idea anything is happening. Once inside, the fungus begins to grow, feeding on the ant's hemolymph, the insect equivalent of blood. Now here's where things get truly unsettling. For the first few days, the ant seems perfectly fine. It goes to work, follows its colony's routines, interacts with other ants. But the fungus is quietly spreading through its body, consuming non-vital tissues first, carefully keeping the ant alive and functional. It avoids the heart, the brain, and the major muscle groups, almost as if it understands the ant's anatomy. Think of it like a hacker who breaks into a computer system but doesn't crash anything right away. Instead, they study the system, learn how it works, and wait for the perfect moment to take control. That moment comes about 2 to 3 weeks after infection. The ant begins acting strangely. It staggers away from its normal foraging trails. It leaves the safety of the colony. Scientists call these erratic movements zombie-like behavior, and for good reason. The ant is no longer in control of its own body. The fungus has infiltrated its muscles and, researchers believe, is releasing chemical compounds that manipulate the ant's nervous system. The infected ant sometimes convulses, falling from branches and landing on the forest floor, only to pick itself back up and begin climbing again with eerie determination. But the fungus isn't just causing random chaos, it has a very specific goal. It needs the ant to climb. The infected ant abandons everything it knows and begins crawling upward toward the underside of a leaf, and not just any leaf. Studies have shown that the fungus drives the ant to a very precise location, roughly 25 centimeters above the forest floor, in a spot with exactly the right temperature and humidity for the fungus to thrive. Researchers measured these conditions carefully and found the sweet spot sits between 20 and 30 degrees Celsius with about 95% humidity. We're talking about a single-celled organism essentially navigating its host to the perfect coordinates. That level of precision is almost impossible to comprehend. When the ant reaches the right spot, it performs what scientists call the death grip. It clamps its mandibles, those powerful jaws, onto the vein of a leaf with incredible force. This bite is so strong that you can find the marks on leaves long after the ant has died. Researchers discovered that the fungal cells actually weave themselves directly into the muscle fibers of the jaw, physically locking them in place like a biological vice. The ant locks on, and it never lets go. This is the fungus's final command. Shortly after the death grip, the ant dies. But the story is far from over. Now the fungus enters its next phase. Over the following days, it consumes what remains of the ant's internal tissues. Then, something remarkable happens. A long stalk, called a stroma, erupts from the back of the ant's head. This stalk grows upward, sometimes reaching 2 or 3 centimeters in length, and eventually produces a capsule filled with new spores. From its elevated position on the leaf, those spores rain down onto the forest floor below, where other ants are foraging. A single fruiting body can release thousands of spores over several days, creating a deadly kill zone directly beneath the leaf. And the cycle begins again. Researchers have been studying this fungus for decades, and every new discovery raises more questions. One of the biggest mysteries is exactly how the fungus controls the ant's behavior. Early theories suggested the fungus invaded the ant's brain directly, physically hijacking the control center. But when scientists at Penn State University examined infected ants under electron microscopes, they found something surprising. The fungal cells were everywhere, surrounding muscle fibers, filling the body cavity, even connecting to each other in a network that resembled a primitive nervous system of its own. But they were not inside the brain. The brain was left physically intact. So how does the fungus control behavior without touching the brain? The leading theory is chemical manipulation. The fungus likely secretes cocktails of neuroactive compounds, essentially drugs, that alter how the ant's muscles and nervous system respond. Some researchers compare it to a puppeteer pulling strings. The brain might still be sending signals, but the muscles are no longer listening to the brain. They're listening to the fungus. Scientists have identified compounds similar to those found in hallucinogenic mushrooms, suggesting the fungus may literally be drugging its host into compliance. And Ophiocordyceps isn't a one-trick organism. There are over 200 known species, and many of them have evolved to target specific ant species. One species attacks bullet ants, another targets carpenter ants, and each one has fine-tuned its strategy over millions of years. This extreme specialization means that a fungus adapted to one ant species typically cannot infect another, even a closely related one. Fossil evidence shows that this relationship goes back at least 48 million years. Scientists found ancient leaves preserved in German shale deposits with bite marks identical to those made by zombie ants today. That means this fungus has been perfecting its mind control technique since before humans even existed. The ant colonies aren't helpless though. They've evolved defenses. Healthy ants can often detect infected nestmates and will carry them far away from the colony before the fungus takes full control. Some species have dedicated undertaker ants, whose job is specifically to remove sick individuals. Other colonies avoid foraging near known infection zones entirely, rerouting their trails away from areas where dead ants cling to leaves overhead. It's a constant evolutionary arms race, the fungus evolving better infiltration, the ants evolving better detection. This arms race has caught the attention of scientists in some unexpected fields. Medical researchers are studying the chemical compounds Ophiocordyceps produces, hoping to find new drugs. If a fungus can produce molecules that precisely manipulate nervous system function, maybe we can learn to create medicines that do similar things in a controlled, beneficial way. Some compounds from related fungi are already being investigated for anti-cancer and anti-inflammatory properties. Traditional Chinese medicine has used a related species called Cordyceps sinensis for centuries, believing it boosts energy and immunity. The zombie fungus has also inspired popular culture in a big way. If any of this sounds familiar, it might be because the creators of the video game and television series The Last of Us based their fictional pandemic on Ophiocordyceps. In that story, the fungus mutates to infect humans, turning people into aggressive, mindless hosts. While that scenario is fiction, the real science behind it is arguably even more fascinating. Could something like this ever happen to humans? Almost certainly not. Our body temperature is far too high for Ophiocordyceps to survive. Fungi that infect insects generally can't tolerate the heat of warm-blooded animals. Our immune systems are also vastly more complex, deploying specialized white blood cells that can identify and destroy fungal invaders before they gain a foothold. But climate change is pushing fungal species to adapt to higher temperatures, and some scientists have flagged this as a long-term concern worth monitoring. Not zombie apocalypse levels of concern, but scientifically relevant nonetheless. What makes this story so captivating isn't just the horror factor, it's what it reveals about the complexity of nature. A microscopic fungus, with no brain, no eyes, no nervous system of its own, can effectively take over a creature many times its size and pilot it to a precise location. It challenges our understanding of intelligence, control, and what it means to be an individual organism. Every time you walk through a tropical forest, this drama is playing out somewhere beneath your feet. Ants climbing leaves they never intended to climb, biting down on veins they never chose to grip, and tiny stalks erupting from their heads to spread the next generation of spores. It's beautiful, it's terrifying, and it's been happening for tens of millions of years. Nature doesn't need scriptwriters. The real world is strange enough on its own, and sometimes the smallest creatures have the biggest secrets.